Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, Northeastern Law graduates. It is my pleasure to be with you tonight to welcome you to your reunion class reception. I hope you enjoyed last night's outstanding tribute panel to the Honorable Nani Burns, as well as this morning's insightful conversations with 8 of our illustrious graduates and faculty. It was great to see many of you there. Also, please join me in recognizing Governor Maura Healey, class of 1998. Who is celebrating her 25-year class reunion. We appreciate the impactful work that you've done for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Governor, as well as your unwavering support for NUSL. Thank you very much. As I'm sure you know, events like Reunion that welcome more than 200 graduates back to campus take tremendous teamwork and planning. Thank you so much to our reunion committees for each of your classes. Your hard work is clear this weekend as we enjoy these fabulous events and opportunities to reconnect. We also offer our heartfelt gratitude to the large number of you who collectively provided more than $500,000 in support of your law school in honor of your reunion. Those dollars are going to facilitate our current students having the same excellent legal education that you had. Also, thanks to our alumni relations and development team, Lindsay Sedonis, Mio Marquis, Marissa Rafael, Julianne Griffin, for their hard work on reunions this year. Thanks, team. Northeastern is celebrating its 125th anniversary this year. I think we have some special signature drinks, Mio. What is it? Oh, is that one of your specials? Anyway, okay, they're very good. So we have signature drinks for the occasion. You might not know this, but the law school was one of the founding colleges of the university, and we started out right there, I think on a corner, or the YMCA might have been located someplace else, but as an evening part-time law school. So Northeastern has always been about access, and we continue that tradition. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Betty Francisco. Class of 1998, and CEO of Boston Impact Initiative. Betty is an entrepreneur and a powerful convener and changemaker. She is shaking things up in Boston for the better. Boston Impact Initiative is investing in economic justice to close the racial wealth gap and to build financial, social, and political power for entrepreneurs of color. In 2022, Boston Magazine named Betty as one of the 100 most influential people in Boston, and the Boston Business Journal named her as a movement leader in 2020 and 2022. These accolades are just a few of the many that Betty has accumulated over her time. Betty is also co-founder of Amplify Latinx, a social venture that's building Latinx economic and political power in Massachusetts. I'm not done, Betty. She's like ready to get. There's so much. Before joining Boston Impact Initiative, Betty was general counsel at Compass Working Capital, where she oversaw its legal affairs, compliance, and risk management. Betty serves on boards of directors of several organizations, including the Boston Foundation, Nellie Mae Education Foundation, Beth Israel Lahey Health, Roxbury Community College, and on the Governor Healy's Latino Advisory Council. We like to keep social justice in the family at Northeastern. In addition to her JD, Betty holds an MBA from the DeMoore McKim School of Business. Thank you, Betty, for joining us tonight. We are proud of all of your accomplishments. Now, please join me in welcoming Betty Francisco to the podium.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to see all of you. I have to admit, this is my first Northeastern Law School reunion, the 25th. So I hope to see you again in the 50th. But it's really exciting to be here tonight. Thank you so much, Dean Hackney, for having me here. I want to uplift your leadership of the law school over the last 5 years. I know you started at a most unprecedented time, and you haven't lost your swagger or your humor. So thank you. And I also want to thank Meal and her team for organizing this, but also for her amazing championing for not just all of our alumni, but she's been an incredible champion for me in particular. She's always looking to uplift opportunities for me to connect with different leaders within Northeastern. She's done amazing work with women in the law, and I just want to thank you for everything that you do to keep our community together. So to my friends and alumni, just thank you for being here tonight. I know it's a rainy night, and we all have sometimes want to just sleep and stay in bed, but I just really appreciate you coming out. And I think that I just want to mention, I am the class of 1998. And some of you may say, who the hell is Betty Francisco? I never heard of her. And that is because I actually started in the class of 97. So I came to Boston in 1994 to go to Northeastern Law, thinking that I wanted to change the world being an immigration lawyer. I had graduated from Bard College. I studied history. I started to understand how policies, practices, really created, for the most part, a lot of what we call today the racial wealth gaps, the sense of inequities that we have here, especially in the Commonwealth. And I thought, I want to be part of changing that. My parents also are immigrants to this country. My mother is Puerto Rican and my father's Chinese. And I witnessed a lot of the issues around poverty and disparities, lack of access to resources that they face. And I thought if I could start to understand the law and change policy, I could create a better life for people like my parents and my family. So I worked at the DA's office for 3 years in New York right after college, thinking that maybe I could learn a little bit about the law. And I realized I didn't want to do criminal law. And I applied to different law schools, and I ended up getting into Northeastern. And a lot of people in New York didn't know this school. What they knew is that it didn't have grades. And they're like, how in the world are you going to get a job, right? So I was like, well, there must be some proxy for the grades. But the reason I came to Northeastern is I visited the school, and out of all the law schools that I got into, this was the one where people were actually nice, where people were friends, where they didn't rip pages out of law books to be competitive, where they helped each other and studied together and built a community of alumni. And that is literally what someone told me when I came here in August. The school hadn't started yet. And I said, can you tell me a little bit about this law school? And she was, I don't remember her name, but she said it was amazing. And I saw her happiness. And I said, that's why I want to come here. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit and tell you a couple of stories. And Emil only gave me 10 minutes, so I'm going to give you sort of 3 highlights that I want to want you to walk away with. So one is Northeastern, for me, broke the cycle of generational poverty. So being from New York, I grew up poor in public housing. My mother was on many public benefits. She raised me as a single parent. And I was lucky enough to go to college with a full scholarship, but I never thought that I could get an advanced degree without incurring a lot of debt. And Northeastern Law offered me a full scholarship, so I was able to come here and get a start. Now, 3 days into coming to the law school, remember those billboards, right, the cork boards back then? There was a sign that said, "Get your JD MBA." And I looked at that and I said, you can do that? You can get 2 degrees at the same time? And the reason it resonated with me, I know you're laughing, you're like, yeah. The reason it resonated with me is because in college, I had a professor, a Latino professor, that said to me, and he's the one that inspired me to actually study law. He said, Betty, the way you're gonna help your community and the way you're gonna uplift people is actually not through the law. You think it is, but it's through business ownership, creating jobs, helping your community by giving them a pathway to employment, and then you building assets so you can help others. And I was like, dude, I am not a capitalist. I do not want to do that right now. So I was just like, whatever. And I didn't want anything to do with economics. I didn't want to study business. But when I got into that law school and I saw that sign, I said, oh my God, it literally, he was in my head saying, this is your opportunity to do both. So I secretly studied for the GMAT because remember, Northeastern is known as a public interest, public policy, social impact school. To want to go into business was not cool at that time. Even less to go into corporate. So I was just like, okay, let me see if I can do this. So I did the JD MBA, and I will tell you, the combination of the 2 degrees changed my life, right? So I was able to graduate with now 2 sets of skills that are really vitally important in today's economy. I was able to get my first job at a law firm at Palmer and Dodge. And that is what started my trajectory towards building assets, building wealth. And by the way, I had no debt because Northeastern Law gave me this opportunity to study without the burden of that tuition bill. And the business school also gave me a full fellowship. So I also didn't have debt there. So imagine that. Imagine the students that come out today and have so much debt and yet are trying to build their trajectory, right? And one thing I want to mention is, I did a lot of that. I set that pathway with a lot of despair and sometimes because I felt like I'm going to go work for the man. I'm not doing what I set out to do here. And more, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a day that I think it was in the computer lab, and I remember saying to you, because we were both about to graduate, and you were going to work for a firm. There are not a lot of us that went to work for law firms, big firms. And Maura was going to Hillendor. And I remember, I didn't know her that well, but I was like, if she's going to go, maybe it's okay. Because you were such a passionate advocate. And I was like, oh, if she's going to do this, maybe there's something that's okay. And I thought there's a point in time where you have to play insider baseball, right? You have to be in a system to understand the system and then change it from inside and then outwards. So I mentioned this story because without that beginning path of Northeastern helping me get to that next level, being able to get a really good job. I started working in '98 at the height of the dot-com boom. This is when salaries were going up every 6 months. And that helped me build my assets so I could finally buy my first place. By 28, I owned my first home. I mean, my parents never owned anything. So being able to literally break that generational cycle of poverty was incredibly, incredibly life-changing. I then met my husband right here, Paul Francisco. We have 2 beautiful children. And, we're trying to pass on the idea that you can do well, but you can also help your community. So, number 1, education really made a difference for me. It was my pathway out. The second thing that I wanted to point out about what Northeastern does is, For me, it created the opportunity to be a social change maker. So throughout my whole career, even though I was working for a firm and then ultimately went to be the first general counsel for Millennium Partners, so first Latina general counsel apparently in the Commonwealth, like there were no Latinas at the time. I know, there weren't that many of us. And so the idea that mentorship and championing and role modeling can help somebody else see themselves in you and then seek that path is underestimated. Because once I got into that position of going even to a firm, and I was only one of 2 Latinas in my law firm. There are very few women partners, I think maybe 1. And so just seeing yourself in these positions helps you think that you can get there too. And so throughout this whole path, I set out to be that role model, to be that champion, to help other young lawyers aspire to not just go into the law, but to also go into the positions that often are not seen as change-making roles, like business, like corporate, like law firms. It's really important to have representation in those spaces of people that have lived experience, that understand what it's like to lift yourself up and to help others. And so that was another opportunity that Northeastern gave me, is to be able to see myself as someone that could drive change and impact through building networks, through mentorship and championing. And as a result of this concept of mentorship and championing, at the time that I was about mid-career, I didn't feel like I had many mentors. I was already a general counsel in a firm, but I was only 10 years out of law school. And I thought, how do I help myself? So I partnered up with another lawyer, Aneda Roman, who didn't go to Northeastern, but she had her own practice, and she was on the Latino bar associations, Latina and the Law Commission. They commissioned a report about the lack of Latinas in the law, the lack of representation. And she said to me one day, hey, Betty, what if we were to do something about this? What if we were to set up a network of some kind that could help uplift Latinas, especially young ones, to see themselves as potential lawyers? And so we started a group, a networking group called Latina Circle. And it was very akin, it brought back memories of the law school when I used to be part of LALSA and APALSA and I know, right? And remember in the old law school, the little community area that we used to hang out with and have events in? That was what kept me motivated and heartened about being here in Boston, because I didn't know anyone here when I first came. And so the importance of cultural networks was so important in my law school career that I thought, how do we bring this to a professional sector? And so Aneda and I started Latina Circle, and it literally was a group of 50 women, 50 Latinas that came together for a breakfast, very culturally fun. It was called Cafecitos. We had breakfast, and we brought a high-ranking Latina who then was U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz. And we started this group both to uplift, mentor, champion Latinas to help them reach positions of power and influence. And this group of 50 women in 2012 became a group of 1,000 by 2015. And we realized we had so much power in ourselves, power to see issues that were affecting our communities. We started to talk about topics around the racial wealth gap, the gender pay gap, the Latina pay gap in particular, issues that we as women in multiple sectors, if we were educated around them, could actually make a difference by championing and advocating around them. And so in 2016, this group of 1,000 women decided to bring in some men and to form Amplify Latinx, which is now a nonprofit focused on building economic and political power for Latinos. This group is now over 8,000 Latino professionals in the Commonwealth. We support Latino-owned small businesses to provide them with resources and capital. And most importantly, we help create civic engagement for the Latino community. And that is partly why I'm so honored to serve on the Governor's Latino Advisory Council, because part of what many of these members of Amplify are members of her council, and they're bringing their expertise and lived experience to the issues most impacting the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And another fun fact about that group, we set out in 2020 to have 20 Latinos in elected roles by 2020, and we got to 27, I think. So over time, we're building Latino political power and representation. The last thing I want to leave you with is Northeastern is known for creating change makers and future shapers. It helps create this understanding that we also represent those that don't have a voice. And throughout my whole career, I've always tried to uplift the voices of people like my mother, of people like my brother, my father, folks that didn't have the ability to advocate for themselves. And I now get to do that in a most fun way at Boston Impact Initiative, because I've taken all of my experiences as a lawyer and a little bit of a stint in entrepreneurship and a lot of experience in impact investing, and went to work for an impact investment fund that is focused on closing the racial wealth divide. So we're working to build economic, political, and social power for communities of color through our investing activity. It's literally the opposite of what I did when I first started working at a law firm, where I was helping venture capitalists make a lot of money. I'm now trying to redistribute wealth. And so I'm really proud and privileged to have this ability to take capital and move it to in communities where it's needed most, but also to speak on behalf of those communities, to be able to uplift the voices of those that can't advocate for themselves. And that I learned here at Northeastern. Northeastern gave me not just the abilities, the skills to do that, but the courage to actually become an advocate and a change maker. Emil is smiling like this because it really has, like, this school does so much for its students, but we need more lawyers that can actually be advocates like this. And as you know, and this is the part that I am going to read a little bit, because right now we're at a time in our country where we have dark forces challenging the very existence of a multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy. From right-wing movements that seek to limit reproductive freedom and voting rights, and now the fight against affirmative action and diversity, equity, and inclusion in our institutions, in our workplaces, and even in funds like ours. And so these movements are seeking to destroy the essence of who we are, the essence of our democracy, which we fought so hard to gain, and a lot of it is being done through the courts, through law. And so we have an opportunity, especially at Northeastern, to be those warriors, those fighters that challenge these dark forces that are impacting us right now. I am a product of affirmative action. I am a product of a diversity, equity, and inclusion program in multiple institutions. And I hope no one ever changes that, because I have given back everything these institutions have given to me by all the work I'm doing to support my community, to help build wealth and assets in communities of color, and also to change the trajectories for so many others. So I hope that you will all join me in this fight, in continuing to be these legal warriors that you started out being. And whatever you're doing now, you can continue to do that, continue the fight. So thank you to my friends, to my fellow alumni. So excited to see you. And again, I'm going to see you in 50 years. Or the 50th reunion, right?